How many lights are there? About 8 million people live down there. Each light is somebody's evening.
Somebody's evening.
The exile order had been delivered in the formal Vel'nari register that the High Conclave reserved for punishments of significant disgrace, precise, cold, and deliberately public. Sela of the Vel'nari Third House had been found in violation of the Outer Reach research protocols, specifically the clause prohibiting unauthorized contact with pre-designation species. Her sister, Kiri, 12 years old, and present at the unauthorized contact due to what the conclave described as inadequate supervision, would accompany her. The planet they were being sent to was the planet in question, Earth. The Coalition's exile facility on Earth was not prison. It was technically a residential integration program, a compound in the Blue Ridge Mountains of what the humans called Virginia, run by a small team of Coalition human liaison officers who managed the specific logistical challenges of placing individuals from advanced civilizations into contact with a species that was still, by most galactic metrics, early in its development. Agent Marsh had been running the program for 11 years. She had received 43 exiles in that time. Had the specific patience of someone who had been the first human face 43 beings had seen after a journey designed to humiliate. She had been the first human face Sela and Kiri saw when the transport cleared and the Virginia mountain air hit them at full autumn force, cold, sharp, and smelling of things that neither of them had data for. Kiri had sneezed 3 times immediately. Sela had stood very still with her hand on her sister's shoulder and looked at Marsh with the controlled dignity of someone who was not going to show that the air smelled overwhelming and beautiful simultaneously. Marsh had handed them both a thermal layer and said, "Altitude will adjust in a few hours. Come inside. There's food and the briefing can wait until you've eaten. We are aware of the orientation protocols," Sela had said. "I'm sure you are," Marsh had said. "You're also hungry. One thing at a time." The first 3 weeks were an education, not the formal variety. The compound had educational programs, language integration sessions, cultural orientation modules that Marsh ran with a specifically neutral tone of someone who had learned that the way you presented information mattered as much as the information itself. But the education that was actually happening was the kind that happened between the sessions. When Kiri discovered that the mountain had deer and spent 4 days observing them from the compound's perimeter, when Sela found the library and didn't come out for an afternoon, when both of them stood in the rain for 20 minutes because they had never experienced rain before, and it turned out that 20 minutes was not enough time to finish processing it. Marsh watched all of this from the appropriate distance, which she had learned over 11 years was the most important skill in her job. You couldn't make someone discover something. You could only be there when they did and make sure the environment was safe enough for the Discovery to land correctly. On the 23rd day she took them to the overlook. It was a 20-minute drive up the mountain road and a 10-minute walk from the parking area, a rocky promontory with a safety railing that had been installed for the specific reason that humans like to stand at the edges of high things and look outward, which was one of the things about humans that Marsh had stopped finding ordinary a long time ago. The city below was Roanoke, not the largest human city, not the most impressive by any metric that a Vel'nari data system would highlight, but at dusk, with the valley filling with the accumulated light of 8 million people settling into their evenings, amber and gold and white spreading outward from the center in the grid pattern that human cities made when you looked at them from above. It was Marsh had found over 11 years of bringing exiles to this specific spot consistently extraordinary to encounter for the first time. Sela's hand went to her mouth, the bioluminescent markings on her face, which ran at a certain frequency when she was in controlled professional mode, shifted, not dramatically, subtle brightening, a small change in pattern rhythm, kind of thing that happened when the emotional calibration system encountered something it wasn't prepared for. Kiri said nothing at. She stood at the railing with her wide eyes on the city and her whole posture forward, as if the city were something she could lean into. How many lights are there? Sela whispered. About 8 million people live down there, Marsh. Each light is somebody's evening. Somebody's evening, Kiri said, slowly, as if she were placing the words somewhere specific. They stood there for a long time. Marsh put her hand on Kiri's shoulder because the child was small and the railing was at adult height, and it seemed like the right thing to do. Kiri didn't move away. You said early in its development, Sela said, eventually not looking away from the city. Was referring to a phrase from the orientation materials. The conclave says, Earth is a pre-designation world. Humans are not evaluated as a mature civilization. That's what the designation system says. Marsh agreed. But they built this, Sela said, quietly, not arguing, observing the careful precision of someone who has been trained to separate what she was told from what she was seeing. They did, Marsh said. 8 million people, Kiri. And each one has an evening. Turned and looked at Marsh with those wide alien eyes. What is an evening for a human? Marsh thought about it. Honestly, it's the part of the day when you stop doing what you have to do and start doing what you choose. For most people, it involves food and some version of other people. Kiri looked back at the city. I think, she said carefully, that is a very good design. Sela turned from the city then and looked at her sister, at this child she had brought into an unauthorized contact situation and gotten exiled for. This 12-year-old who was now having opinions about the quality of human civilization design while looking at 8 million lights in a valley in Virginia. Kiri, she said. Yes. I am sorry you were exiled with me. Kiri looked at her older sister with the specific expression of a child who has been paying attention to something adults weren't expecting. I'm not, she said.